because I think the number one skill to master today for any age or stage of life is to learn how to learn, because we live in a world where it's constant change. We have AI, the amount of information is doubling at dizzying speeds, but how we learn it and retain it and read it, it hasn't changed a lot. So that growing gap creates a lot of stress for us.
Jim Kwik, who is a true legend in the world of brain optimization and accelerated learning, he's the #1 brain coach globally, a sought-after speaker, and the author of the best-selling book Limitless.
And how it manifests in our body, it's higher blood pressure, a compression of leisure time. That stress and overload leads to more sleeplessness.
As we age, the brain undergoes natural changes, including a decline in certain cognitive abilities. Factors like genetics, lifestyle, and environmental influences can either mitigate or exacerbate this decline.
There's so many components to developing a limitless mind, if you will. Actually, 3. It's your mindset, your motivation, and also the methods that you're using. I believe that these difficult times, they could distract us. These difficult times can diminish us, or these difficult times, they can develop us. Ultimately, we decide with the choices, what to eat, what to feed our minds, what to think.
Depressive symptoms grew from a base of about 193 million people worldwide to 246 million, and anxiety disorders grew from about 298 million people affected to 374 million. In this episode, Jin talks about the 10 best strategies to maintain a healthy brain with limitless potential. Welcome back to the Be That Life podcast that empowers you to embrace your full potential. I'm so excited to announce a partnership with the Megaverse team, and I really hope that you enjoy this episode. Hi, Jim, and welcome to the Be That Life podcast.
Glad to be on, Mary. I've been looking forward to this.
Me too. So I'm about to share a piece of information that I haven't shared online before, and it's actually a piece of information about my son.
Okay.
So my son developed motor tics at the age of 6. He developed a lot of twitches on his neck and then his shoulders. And he did a bit of vocal tics, but not extreme. And I don't have a history. None of my family has a history of tics. I lived in the Middle East where there was no exposure to anything like that. So you can only imagine, I was naturally freaked out. Now, for our listeners who don't know what that is, it is really just a neurological disorder between the different regions in our brain. It is also known as a mild form of Tourette's. He's 20 now, and he is free from tics, but I try to do everything I could from a natural, holistic perspective to help him kind of recover from that, because I know there's so many people out there, children and adults, who develop motor tics and eventually just become full-blown Tourette's. Let's just say that experience was extremely traumatic for me, and I've never spoken about it, but I thought this is a great time for me to talk about it, mainly because you also share kind of a similar situation when you were younger, and I would love for you to share this pivotal moment in your life and your experience, which led you to become really passionate about what you do today.
Yeah, so my inspiration really was my desperation. It's when people see me on stage as a memory expert at events that you and I attend or speak at, whether it's Mind Valley or another, our mutual friend Ken speaking at his events. They see me do these demonstrations where I'll often challenge an audience to challenge my brain, meaning maybe I'll have 100 people stand up and they'll pass around a microphone and introduce themselves to everybody, and I'll memorize all their names. Or they'll give me 100 random words or 100 random numbers, and I'll recall them forwards and backwards. But I always tell people, I don't do this to impress you. I really do this to express to you what's possible, because the truth is, every single person right now in your community that's listening or they're watching, they could do that and a lot more too. And people are probably thinking there's just no way. But after doing this teaching and being a brain coach for 3 decades, I realized that regardless of your age, your background, your career, your education level, your financial situation, gender, history, IQ, we all have this incredible latent potential, this superpower, if you will, found between our ears called our brain. And the reason why I know it's possible is because, as you alluded to, I had some challenges myself as a child. When I was 5 years old, I was in school and I took a very bad fall. I went headfirst into a radiator, and I was rushed to the emergency room. And my parents said they were very concerned. They said that I was never quite the same for a long time. Where before, as a kid, I was very curious, very energized, playful. I became very shut down. And where it really showed up was in school. I had what they called processing issues, where teachers would explain themselves over and over again, and I would pretend to understand, but I didn't really understand. I had poor focus, a poor memory. It took me 3 years longer just to learn how to read, and that was very embarrassing, And so sometimes kids go through struggles, but I think through struggles comes strength. Through challenge comes change. It makes us more self-aware. It brings our acuity to how can I make this better, like you did, with your family. When I was 9 years old, there was a pivotal moment where I was falling behind and I was slowing down the class, and I was being teased pretty badly by the other children. And a teacher came to my defense, and she pointed to me in front of the whole class and said, "Hey, leave that kid alone. That's the boy with the broken brain." And I know she was well intentioned, but all I took out of it was, oh, I was broken, And so I felt like I was the broken one in my school. And so every single time I did badly in school, which was weekly, or I wasn't picked for sports or something like that, my self-talk was, oh, because I have the broken brain, And so that label became my limit. And and I struggled through it till I was till I was 18 years old, till I was a young adult. And then eventually I found a mentor and I found resources like you did, on your quest. It's different, but it's the same. And everything in my life turned around. I started learning about neuroscience and the brain gut connection, and the vagus nerve and the default network, and nutrition for the brain. And I started learning strategies on how to actually learn how to read faster, understand more, and ways of improving my memory that are science-based. Or I pulled also from ancient cultures, like what did the ancient Greeks do before there were printing presses and computers? How did they remember things? How did they pass down history? And yeah, and my grades improved, but also my life improved also as well. And then when I found those that I could elevate my life, I could help but help other people, right? And because I think you learn something for one of two reasons. People listening right now, they want to learn from you and your guests because they want to improve their life, but also they want to improve the life of their children, of their family, and their community, their clients. And I started to teach it. And one of my very first students, I was 18 years old. She was a college freshman also. She read 30 books in 30 days, which is unheard of. Not skim or scan, but really read them and understood them. And I wanted to find out not how she did it. I know how because I taught her the methods on how to do that, but I wanted to know why. Because I often find that a lot of people know what to do, but they don't always do what they know. I don't know if that's been your experience. A lot of people know they should meditate or eat better or prioritize their sleep, or,
All the
do,
time. All the
yeah, or
time.
meditate or journal or have that green juice. But but I realized that common sense is not common practice. And I wanted to find out why she was doing it. I found out her purpose was her mother was dying of terminal cancer, and the doctors only gave her mom 2 months to live. And the books she was reading were books to save her mom's life. She was reading authors that maybe you've had on your podcast and others to help her. And I get a call from this young lady 6 months later, and she's crying hysterically. And when she finally stops, I find out they're tears of joy that her mother not only survived, but is really starting to thrive. Doctors don't know how or why. They were calling it a miracle. But her mother attributed her turnaround to the great advice she got from her daughter, who learned it from all these books. And in that moment, I realized that if knowledge is power, then learning is our superpower. And it's a superpower we all have. It's just we aren't taught, in traditional education how to access it, meaning that there's a lot of classes in school, in education on what to learn, math and history, science, Spanish, but there are very little classes on how to actually learn those things. Like, how do you focus? How do you concentrate? How do you remember things? Going to a child and pointing to them and say, study this or focus and remember this. That's like going to a child and saying, play the ukulele. And they've never taken a class or any kind of coaching on how to play the ukulele. And we just automatically assume they should be able to do it. And so I focus my work on two areas, on learning how to learn, because I think the number one skill to master today for any age or stage of life is to learn how to learn, because we live in a world where it's constant change. We have AI, the amount of information is doubling at dizzying speeds, but how we learn it and retain it and read it, it hasn't changed a lot. So that growing gap creates a lot of stress for us. And how it manifests in our body, it's higher blood pressure, a compression of leisure time. That stress and overload leads to more sleeplessness, right? And so I dedicated my life to teaching people something called meta learning, which is the science and the art of learning how to learn. And also, it's just not just the software of a computer you need to refine, the hows, the how to read faster, how to remember names, how to remember client information, product information, give speeches without referring to notes, all important things. But you also have to take care of the hardware, which is your brain. So I started to focus on how do you optimize the hardware, that 3-pound matter between our ears, because your brain doesn't come with an owner's manual when you're born, and it's not user friendly. So I could appreciate, platforms like yourself that help to educate people, give them instruction and insight and some inspiration, little things that they could do to make a big difference, in their life. Because I think our brains can, I don't think, I know our brains control like everything,
It
right?
does. And I
It's a
always
control
say though,
center.
like at the end of the day, we're not giving a life manual on how to do life in general. So
Mhm.
aside from doing, you know, helping us learn, helping us become parents, we're not given that manual. So it makes it so difficult for people to really know what to do. And we all come from very different cultures too. So I
Yeah.
want to talk about the concept of the limitless mind, because to me that is extremely intriguing. And of course, you've come up with an expanded edition of your Limitless book, which
Yeah.
everyone who hasn't bought it should get it today because it's an incredible read. Now, how can someone begin to shift their mindset from one of limitations to one that really embraces the potential of constant growth and expansion?
Yeah. So my book Limitless was really geared towards being an owner's manual for your brain. And you mentioned that we recently updated it. People can get information at limitlessbook.com and get some great free bonuses as a thank you for supporting it. We donate all the proceeds to build schools for children around the world, in Ghana, Guatemala, Kenya, and also for Alzheimer's research. Also, I lost my grandmother to Alzheimer's, so in her memory, I think feel like you learn to earn to return, in that spirit. Yeah, there's so many components to developing a limitless mind, if you will. Actually, three. It's your mindset, your motivation, and also the methods that you're using. Meaning that the goal in life is you control what you can control, right? And you can't control always the economy or the economics or healthcare systems or politics, but we can't control the weather, but we can control, like, we always have a choice. Like in Limitless, there's a quote that says, life is the letter C between the letters B and D. Life is C between B and D. What does that mean? B stands for birth, D stands for death, life C, choice.
Oh, wow.
I truly believe
That's
that every
profound.
day, yeah, every day we wake up with a new chance because we can make a new set of choices. Because one step in another direction can completely change your destination, right? You take a step into learning about gut health, or brain health, or oral health, or relationship, something, right? Something that they learn in your show, and then all of a sudden they end up in a different place. And so I believe that these difficult times, they could distract us. These difficult times can diminish us, or these difficult times, they can develop us. Ultimately we decide with the choices what to eat, what to feed our minds, what to think, what our routines. What do we do first thing in the morning? What do we do, at night? Because think that first we create our habits, and then those habits create us back, right? And so, the how to have a limitless mind is you need to control your mindset, the set of assumptions and attitudes you have about something. You control your motivation, meaning the purpose and the energy you bring to something. And also you control the methods. Like some people, you're just using old methods for parenting or old methods that don't work for learning, right? Like think about reading. Reading is not a skill that we are born with. We learned it. But when's the last time we took a class on how to read, right? Probably 5 or 6 or 7 years old. But the difficulty and demand has increased so much, but how we learn it is still like a 7-year-old.
Right.
And so we live in an age of technology. We live in an age of auto driving cars and spaceships that are going to Mars. But our vehicle of choice, often when it comes to our own personal development, our ability to learn is often more like a horse and buggy. So we wonder why we're struggling and we're not able to keep up or catch up, much less be able to get ahead. So I focus on those areas, our mindset, our motivation, and the methods. What are the best foods to eat? What are the ways to, get the best sleep of your life? What's the best ways of studying and focusing and remembering and thinking also as well?
You mentioned about distraction, and we have an abundance of distraction in our
Oh yeah.
world today. What are the strategies that you recommend for individuals? I ask this question mainly because I deal with so many people and work with so many people with this type of issue, focused on the amount of abundant distraction there is in the world today. So, the strategies that you would recommend for individuals to effectively filter,
Yeah.
absorb, and really retain the most valuable knowledge.
Yeah, it all starts with focus, right? Having an alertness and a concentration, because how do you maintain that concentration in a world full of rings and pings and dings and app notifications, social media alerts? So nowadays, I think we live in the age of attention and we're driven to distraction. One of the things that habits that get people distracted often is their devices, especially, most people, what do they do the first thing when they wake up? Is they reach for their smart device, their phone, right? And so when you wake up, you're in this relaxed state of awareness and you're extremely suggestible. But if the first thing you do is pick up your phone and you're exposed to, thousands of pieces of content and you're context switching, you're training your nervous system to be distracted. You're rewiring your brain to be distracted, and you wonder why you can't focus at work, or your kids can't focus in school, or you can't focus even in a simple conversation, or when you're listening to something. So I believe focus is not something you have. Focus is something that you do. Focus is more like a muscle, but if the first thing you're doing in the morning is distracting yourself, then you're flexing your distraction muscles. And if the how we do anything is how we do everything. It's kind of like a first principle. How we do anything is how we do everything. And if we tend to, flex those distraction muscles, then we carry that throughout the day and we're just in a distracted mode, right? And so what I would say is to help somebody with distraction is certainly control your environment. That's one of the best ways, right? Turn off your phone. Or I think the most important function on our phone is like airplane mode to be able to turn it off so you're not easily distracted. But the other thing is harnessing our mind, meaning you have part of your brain called the reticular activating system. I know you want to talk a little bit about science, your RAS, reticular activating system. And that's what shines a spotlight in terms of what we are aware of at any given time. So your brain primarily actually is a deletion device. And what do I mean by that? It tries to delete information because we're constantly bombarded, right? It's like taking a sip of water out of a fire hose going throughout our day with emails and reports and books and all the things we need to keep up with, people. And the challenge is that, you only can let in a certain amount in, otherwise you'd be frustrated, you'd be overloaded. What you decide to let in is determined by your reticular activating system. And so a simple example is years ago, my younger sister, she would send me, and this is a long time ago, she would send me postcards and emails and pictures of a very specific breed of dog. It was like a pug dog, right? And I was wondering why she was doing this. And I realized that it was her birthday was coming up, and she's a very good marketer. And she obviously wanted this dog as a present. And funny thing happened, Mary, I started seeing these dogs everywhere. Like I would go to the juice bar or the health food store, and I would see somebody in front of me checking out, with the cashier, and they were holding a pug dog. I am a runner, and I'd be running in my neighborhood, and I saw somebody walking six pug dogs. And my question for everybody listening is, where were those pug dogs before? Did they just magically appear all of a sudden in my life? No, they were probably always there, but I never paid attention because I was deleting them. It wasn't important to me until I started asking the question about pug dogs. And it's kind of like questions are the answer. In order to harness the power of our focus, you want to ask questions that help you hone in like laser focus. It's kind of like, I don't know if anybody listening used to play with a magnifying glass. Growing up as a kid, coming from immigrant parents, we didn't have a lot of money. We lived in the back of a laundromat that my mom worked at. I didn't have a lot of toys, but I had this magnifying glass, and I'd be out there burning leaves or getting the mischiefs like that. But it's interesting, like when you're using a magnifying glass, it creates a bright, sharp point, right? And it's interesting that we use the words that we use when we say someone is bright or we say that they're sharp. It means that we're saying that their person is smart, right? If they're bright and sharp or they're intelligent, but maybe they're not smarter. Maybe they're just better focused, like that magnifying glass does to light. And that truly is power, because it could burn and create a flame, and that's what we want to do with our work and our studies. And so what I would say to everybody who wants to improve their focus, besides controlling their environment and not picking up their phone just out of habit, is to inflexing their distraction muscles, is to ask better questions. Like, have you ever read a page in a book and got to the end, Mary, and then forgot what you just read? Have you ever had that experience?
Yes,
Or
I've had that
you go
experience.
back,
Even just like speaking to someone, I forget what just happened, what I just was
yeah.
thinking about.
Or yeah, if you read something and then you forgot and then you reread it and then you still forgot.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I've
but
had
if you
that.
start asking questions like, what am I learning here? What do I want to learn? How can I use this? How can I apply this? All of a sudden, when you're reading, you say, "Oh, there's a pug dog. There's a pug dog. There's an answer. There's an answer. There's an answer." And that's really one of the secrets to better comprehension, better understanding. Because a lot of people, when they forget something, they blame their retention. When it's not your retention, it's you paying attention. The art of learning, the art of memory is the art of attention, right? And it's something that we have control of, because my message to people is, you don't have to be the passenger of your mind. You're the pilot, right? And you could control what you focus on at any given time, and whatever you focus on, you shine a spotlight on. So even controlling the questions you have throughout the day, like things to help you focus. Like, it's not even about time management, because we all have 24 hours in a day, because that's the one thing that's equal, right? We don't have an equal amount of wealth, an equal amount of education, an equal amount of contacts and a network, but we all have the equal amount of 24 hours in a day. But it's not so much about time management, it's more mind management, right? It's more priority management. And I always say the most important thing is to keep the most important thing the most important thing, right? And that's what we should be focusing on. So like one of the questions we could ask throughout the day is what's most important to me right now? When you're in an argument with your kids or your significant other, or your team or customer, what's most important right now, right? Or maybe questions like, what's the best use of this moment, right? And then it refocuses that lens to help shine a spotlight on the things, instead of asking questions like, why does this always happen to me? Or why can't my kids learn this? Then you're not going to get very good answers. But if you ask questions like, how can my child learn this and enjoy the process, right? How can I make this playful? How can I make this more enjoyable? Then you get a different set of answers, because you start shining that spotlight on something that's more empowering, if you will.
You mentioned earlier that there's some kids that focus better than others. That's how does that happen? Are parents part of that movement, or like how do
Yeah.
some kids are better focused than others?
Well, I would say that the part of it is nature. Certainly, part of it is also nurture, meaning that part of it is so they say about 1/3 of our brain's potential is determined by genetics, right? And so maybe that there's an element of ADD or ADHD. There's certain traits that are passed on genetically, but that means 2/3 is in our control, in our influence, and the way I treat, and I'm not an expert, I'm not a medical doctor or a PhD in education. This, what I share are things that have worked for me, and we have students in every country in the world, 195 nations, so we get a lot of feedback. And my goal is to take the very complex research that I read on a regular basis, and try to distill it and translate it into something where somebody could do simple little things to make a big difference, in their life. And so part of it is nature, maybe 1/3, but 2/3 is in our influence. It's the food that we eat. It's our sleep, right? If children aren't sleeping or adults aren't sleeping on a regular basis, they're not going to have great focus, right? If you had I don't know how well you sleep on a regular basis,
I sleep
but
amazing. I sleep
yeah,
amazing.
that's a superpower for sure. But I know some people, if for some reason they didn't get a good night's sleep, how is their brain functioning the next day? It's easily distracted. It's low energy. That brain fog you talked about, it's not being able to make good decisions. They can't remember the simple things, right? And so, we focus on there are 10 things that actually could help upgrade your limitless brain when it comes to your lifestyle, and that's in our control, right? And so that's what we
What are those
focus on.
10 things? Is it just is it
Yeah,
is it the basic things that we already know, like proper sleep and
they
diet,
are. And I
exercise?
would encourage people, when I spend time with people who are really extraordinary, like high mental performers, I realize that they lean into the basics. They always, even sometimes when we hear a fundamental, we're like, oh, I know that already. Talk about something new, that kind of thing. But I realize that it's the basics that get us, the greatest level of success. And so I'll share the 10 things. They're all backed by science. And actually, we could turn this, into a little master class for everybody. People should be taking notes so that they remember it better. But yeah, when I go through these 10 things, maybe they could write it down, but go one extra step. Maybe do an audit this past week. How much energy and attention and effort, time did you put towards these 10 things? And maybe you could rate yourself a scale of 0 to 10. 10 being like, I owned it, right? Like I did really well in this area this week. So the first one, in no particular order, I'll go through them fast. The first one is a good brain diet. It's a whole area of science I write about in Limitless. We talk about it in our podcast. There's a whole area called neuronutrition. So it's a science that your brain is only 2% of your body mass, but it requires like 20% of the nutrients. And some of the nutrients are a little bit different than the rest of our body. So there's certain foods that are really good for our brain. And, again, everyone is a little bit different. I always recommend, I know you talk about the gut health often. There's certain foods that might be not work for us. So you want to use your own judgment, go to a function medicine doctor, take a microbiome test, food allergy test, nutrient profile test to see, which foods might aggravate you. And then you could go from there. But generally, the foods, some of them my favorite, and these are just universal. Avocados are good for the brain, the monounsaturated fat, because your brain is mostly fat. I like berries, especially blueberries. They're very neuroprotective. I like to call them
You
brain
take
berries.
you take wild blueberries or do you take regular berries?
Yeah, I love wild organic food, local if it's possible. It's not always possible, but we do what we could do, right? I love frozen blueberries also as a snack, for me and my family. So blueberries are one of my favorite go-tos. Broccoli is a really good nutrient for the brain. Olive oil, very good for the brain. If your diet allows, eggs, the choline in eggs is good for cognitive health, if you're allowed to do that with your diet. Other ones that I could think of, things like green leafy vegetables like kale and spinach, wild salmon, sardines. We talk about the omega-3s and the DHA, which is good for the brain. Also turmeric, you know,
Nuts.
uh, yeah, turmeric, nuts, like walnuts, especially almonds, high in vitamin E, which is neuroprotective. Walnuts also look like the human brain as a little memory trick to remember to eat
Yeah, that's true, actually.
walnuts. And probably everyone's favorite, dark chocolate.
Yeah.
Generally, what's good for your mood is going to be good for your mind. Not milk chocolate or high sugar chocolate, but dark chocolate is protective to your brain also as well. So that's and then on the other side, what's not so good, processed foods, high sugar foods, refined foods. And so on a scale of 0 to 10, you could rate like this past week, how much, how was your diet? Second thing that's good for your brain is killing ants. Clinically proven to be good for your brain. Ants actually stands for automatic negative thoughts. And this is more your mindset. Going back to me saying all the time I was broken, it affected what I was capable of, and so I believe your brain is this incredible supercomputer and your self-talk is the program it will run. So if you tell yourself, I'm not good at remembering people's names, then you won't remember the name of the next person you meet because you program your supercomputer not to. If people truly understood, Mary, how powerful their mind is, they wouldn't say or think something they didn't want to be true.
Mhm.
Just let that sink in. It's not that you have one negative thought and it ruins your life any more than eating that jelly donut will ruin your life. But if you did it multiple times a day, every single day, it would have effect, right? And same thing with negative thoughts. So I believe that all behavior is belief driven. That if you want to create a new result in your life, health or happiness or good relationship or something, you need to do a new set of behaviors. But in order to do those behaviors, you need beliefs that say that's possible and that you deserve it. And so on a scale of 0 to 10, how positive, encouraging are your thoughts? So, and then how do you fix that? Like even something simple like being aware of something helps you to fix it, right? You say, oh, I'm not good at remembering names, or I don't have a good memory. You could always add a little word like yet at the end. I don't have a great memory yet, but it feels different, right? Just like saying like all the time throughout the day, sometimes I found myself years ago saying, oh, I got to walk the dogs. I got to meditate today. I got to eat right. It feels different than saying like, oh, I get to walk the dog. Right? I get to meditate today. Just changing like got to get, that O into an E, it just changes. So I just want to remind people that the words we say to ourselves matter. So on 0 to 10, you can rate yourself on that. The third thing that's science-based that will help you have a more limitless brain is exercise. We were talking about that before we started recording, that I always like to stand and move around when I speak or being interviewed. This is the principle. As your body moves, your brain grooves. When you listen to a podcast like this and you're going for a nice brisk walk or you're on an elliptical or a bike, it's been shown that you'll actually retain it better and understand it better. Because when you move your body, going back to the science, you create something called brain-derived neurotropic factors, BDNF. And BDNF is like fertilizer for neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity states that it's a science principle phenomenon that says that your brain changes based on novelty, and that you could create a new experience and that experience actually rewires your brain, and so thoughts are things, certainly, and moving our body is one of the best ways to keep your brain more plastic, more malleable, so we could grow older, but we could still learn. We could still, change our thoughts. We can change our beliefs and our habits. And so on a scale of 0 to 10, how much are you moving throughout the day? And I don't just mean doing CrossFit or Pilates 3 times a week. I mean, how much are you moving, right? Your brain, the primary reason, going back to science, that we have a brain is to control our motor movements, to control our movement. That's why we have the brain that we do. And it's not just a brain body connection, it's a body brain connection. So it's not just like our brain affects our body, using our body actually affects our mind. So there was a study done at Oxford University saying that jugglers, just the act of learning how to juggle will actually be able to create a bigger brain. You'll create more white matter, and like there was this study also done in London where they took London cab drivers and they have to do a rigorous test, where they study for years to be able to know like all the roads and then the streets and the highways in their neighborhood, but they have that part of their brain, visual spatial, is more dense, right? And so their brain actually changes through study and also, we know through movement. And so, some of my favorite activities like dancing is so good for your brain. Martial arts, great for your brain. Racket sports, even like things like table tennis, great for your brain. So, what are you doing throughout the day to stimulate your mind? Maybe you work for an hour, but then you take a 10 minutes to do some push-ups, some calisthenics, some like a kettlebell movements. It's just movement around. So 0 to 10, how much are you moving throughout the day? Are you getting your 8,000 to 10,000 steps in a day? Walking is so good for your brain. Walking has been shown to reduce all cases of mortality, of dying. And so, taking time to do that, getting your steps in. Number four are brain nutrients, meaning that maybe you're not getting it from your food. And I always prefer people getting their curcumin through their turmeric or whatever. But maybe you need to supplement. And so you could go to a functional medicine doctor and see what nutrients you're lacking, because your brain needs vitamin D. It needs the B vitamins, those your brain vitamins. I mentioned omega-3s. If you're not getting it through fish, can you supplement with it? So on a scale of 0 to 10, supplementation. Number five is a positive peer group. And this is interesting. You and I were talking about, the various friends we have in common and going to events. We realize that a positive peer group has a dramatic effect on our brain, meaning we are social creatures, and who we spend time with is who we become. There's that cliche, and there's a lot of truth to a lot of cliches, that we are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. Going back to science, an explanation for that is we have something in our nervous system called mirror neurons, like mirror neurons. And what does a mirror do? A mirror imitates you, right? And so we have these cells in our body that are constantly looking to copy our environment. So we start adapting or adopting things of the people, the habits, and the things that people we spend time with. I always tell people watched, and it's another acronym, WATCH. W stands for words. We start using the same words and language of the people we spend time with, right? Same lingo. The A in watch are actions. We start acting and behaving like the people around us, right? We start eating how they eat. We start, whether someone smokes, it has lots to do with your neurological networks and more to do with your social networks, right? Also, going through here, the T in watch are our thoughts. We start having the same thoughts, the internal self-talk of the people around us. If people around us are always saying, why me? We tend to say, why me to ourselves, right? The C in watch is our character, our integrity. We start, if we're around kind of shady people, we start compromising our own integrity also as well. And then finally, the H in watch is probably one of the most important, our habits. I mentioned first you create your habits, then our habits create us. You create your habits of eating right and doing good things for yourself, and those habits create us back. So those are our positive peer group, because we always need, all of us need somebody that encourages us, that challenges us, that cheerleads for us. And if you haven't found that person, my recommendation is to be that person. Be that person for somebody else, especially be that person for yourself, right? So that's the first five. So you can rate yourself 0 to 10, because sometimes it's our family members, the people we spend time with, that hold us back. And it's not that they mean you ill will. Sometimes they want to protect you. They see you listen to podcasts or going to events or always reading books. And they're like, why are you always doing that? But
Right.
maybe they have good interest for you. They don't want you to get your hopes up. They don't want you to be disappointed. They don't want you to maybe outgrow them, and leave them, right? Because you're making progress. But you could love your family and you love your friends, but you could choose who you take advice from. I always say, don't take criticism from someone you wouldn't take advice from. So
Right.
on a scale of 0 to 10, how's your positive peer group? Number six is what's good for your brain is a clean environment. And I mean that in two different ways. First of all, what's good for your brain health is good, clean air. But if you're in a place where, there's a lot of pollution that could have, or there's off gassing from your furniture, these neurotoxins or your carpeting, that could affect your brain also as well. The water supply, if it's high in chemicals, so having potentially a water filter, in your home, or reverse osmosis or something that you have more clean source of water, because your brain is mostly water, just like your body. By the way, staying hydrated, will boost your reaction time and thinking speed upwards of 30%. A
Yeah.
lot of times people aren't tired. They're just not drinking enough, fluids and
A lot of
electrolytes.
the times people are not hungry and they're hungry. They think they're hungry, but they're just thirsty.
Yeah, as I drink my water right now. But yeah, just staying hydrated. Even when you sleep, you could lose a lot of water through respiration and perspiration. So if you could have some structured water first thing in the morning, I put a little like sea salt or a little lemon
Like salts as
or
well.
or electrolytes, with magnesium and and some phosphorus and some sodium in it, good balance. But that's good for our chemistry of our body and within our brain's part of our body. So on a scale of 0 to 10, how clean is your environment? And also, I mean, clean by just organizing your environment. When you clean your desk or you make your bed or you clean everything on your computers in the right files, then you have clarity of mind. Because I realize that your external world is a reflection of your internal world, right? So just clean environment. So on a scale of 0 to 10, how clean is your home? How clean is your workspace, your bedroom, and so on? And then number 7 is a big one. It's sleep. We mentioned this. Sleep is one of the most important, hacks for your brain, if you will. When you sleep, if you have long-term memory issues, maybe consider doing a sleep study. Any doctor could prescribe it for you. Maybe you have insomnia or sleep apnea or something like that. Because when you sleep, that's where you consolidate short to long-term memory. When you sleep, you clean out the sewage system in your brain, going back to the science, kicks in, and you clean out the beta amyloid plaque, the proteins that build up that could lead to brain aging challenges as we age. So, how well are we sleeping? 0 to 10, this past week. And some of my favorite ways of optimizing our sleep, just I'll name a few of them. We've done many podcasts on this ourselves on our show. It's first of all, getting sunlight first thing in the morning has been shown to reset your circadian rhythm. One of the most important thing, not through the windows, because the windows will actually filter out some of the spectrum of light. But if you are blessed to be able to go outside and get, even if it's hazy outside, or rainy, then you'll still get the benefits of the sunlight, because your visual health is very, related to your mental health. Your eyes are only part of your brain that you could see, right? It's that part that's outside of your skull. And so direct sunlight is great. Not looking direct into the sun, but usually first thing in the morning, it's not blaring. The second thing is reducing your caffeine past usually around 2 p.m. Some people could have espresso or something, late at night. I'm not one of those
You're
people.
Are you a caffeine drinker?
I do more, not coffee, but I like green tea. That works for
Matcha?
me.
Do you like matcha?
Yeah, very much so.
Because I don't
I don't
drink
do it.
coffee.
What's that?
I don't drink coffee either.
Yeah, I'm more of a tea drinker. Occasionally I'll have some coffee, but I don't rely on it so much because I find that if you don't, I'm very sensitive with my sleep with caffeine. The half-life, could stay in your system upwards of 8 to 10 hours. And so you generally don't want to have caffeine, in the afternoon if you are sensitive. I also find for me particularly, I get a crash with caffeine. And so for me, I do more of an ice bath first thing in the morning, and your dopamine goes up about 250%, and it's sustained. It's not, I don't get that crash. It changes my mood and, my alertness and I could have that for sustained for hours, just doing a cold shower or jumping into the ocean if it's cold, or something like that. Cold plunge, it's very trending right now, but there's so many benefits to your neurochemicals. And so, yeah, so I'm not a big coffee drinker, but if you do drink coffee, it's recommended according to science to wait 90 minutes until you wake up. So that's why I rather start my day with water or structured water first, because also coffee could also take water out of your system like alcohol does. And so that's my personal preference. So if you do coffee, you can do it a little bit earlier, but I would wait for the first 90 minutes and do something else. Do a green juice or electrolytes or something else that's more nourishing. Also for sleep, 2 more. Just think about it as hunter-gatherers. We would know it's time to sleep when there would be a drop in 2 things in our environment. There'd be a drop in temperature and there would be a drop in light. And yet, when in modern society, in modern conveniences with a thermostat, you could have the same temperature all the time. But if you lowered it, it's been shown that it produces more melatonin. You would know it'd be time to sleep because it got cooler, and then we start creating melatonin. So even taking a hot bath, with some Epsom salt is great to help transition somebody for better sleep because the magnesium in the Epsom salt is good for sleep. Also, it helps you relax. And also, when you leave that hot bath or sauna, your core body temperature will drop, and that would be a signal to your nervous system to create that melatonin naturally. If you're not supplementing with it. Also, when I mentioned light, it gets dark, but sometimes with modern conveniences, um, especially with our devices, this, you hear this a lot. I have a video that has like, 7 million views online, but just talking about the dangers of screen time to your sleep, because that blue light that comes off your screen from the television or from your tablet or your phone, it fools your mind into thinking it's still daytime. So you don't create that melatonin. So I like it dark and cool, but not so cold that you're shivering and it distracts you, right? But generally you make it colder. And so you could, take a hot bath or a sauna before you go to sleep. I wouldn't generally recommend working out late at night because it'll get your heart rate. You need to calm your nervous system and bring your heart rate down to help you to be able to sleep better, to help your readiness the next day. But on scale of 0 to 10, how's your sleep? And then finally, 8, 9, and 10, the eighth thing is protect your brain, which is pretty straightforward, meaning I had a couple of traumatic brain injuries as a child because I wasn't very well supervised, but wear a helmet, like when you're doing things, or just, avoid getting in things that where you could, create an accident, extreme sports and so on. I work with a lot of athletes who have concussions, and your brain is very resilient, but it's also very fragile also as well. So protect your brain. And then 9 and 10, 9 is new learnings. And I'm preaching to the choir because if somebody's listening right now, they love to learn. But your brain is like a muscle. It's obviously an organ, but it acts like a muscle, and it's use it or lose it. And it's one of those things where how do you build a muscle? You give it two things: novelty and nutrition. You give it novelty, you work it out, and then you feed it nutrition so it could grow stronger. Same thing with your mental muscles. So on a scale of 0 to 10, how much are you learning every single day? And I would say the best exercise for your brain, people always want to know, well, what app or something. My favorite is reading. Reading is to your mind what exercise is to your body. If people follow me on social media and they see me with Oprah or Elon Musk or whoever, people always ask how we connected. We bonded over books because leaders are readers, right? You read to succeed. If somebody has decades of experience and they put it into a book, on relationships or on investing, on AI or health, right? And you could sit down in a few days and read that book. All of a sudden, you have this advantage of downloading decades of experience and wisdom into days. And that's a huge advantage. There's a reason why Warren Buffett reads 500 pages a day still, right? So you want to exercise your mind. And so 0 to 10, how much are you learning every day? And the last one I would say is very important. It's stress management. One of the invisible, challenges that, it's not as tangible to people that affects our brain is stress. When you're in a stress state, you're creating cortisol, adrenaline. You generally are more in that sympathetic mode as opposed to parasympathetic. Parasympathetic in your nervous system is more rest and digest. But, when you're in this fight or flight, you're in your survivor brain, and you are often held hostage from your creative brain, your executive functioning. And it's hard to make this good decisions when you're stressed, right? And so on a scale of 0 to 10, how well are you coping with stress? And because we all have stress, right? But how well are you coping with stress? Chronic stress has been shown, the science is clear. Chronic stress actually shrinks your brain, right? It makes it smaller, which is probably not a good thing for many of us. And so I would say, like, what are you doing to cope with stress? My favorite thing is I meditate twice a day, right? Just 10 to 20 minutes a day. And I think sometimes, like if something's not working, like your electronics or kids' video games, sometimes you just unplug it and you plug it back in and it just kind of resets. So, well, same thing with our brain. Sometimes you have to disconnect to reconnect. You go on a little dopamine fast or a digital fast for, like on a Saturday for like 10 hours. You're like, okay, I'm not going to go on my devices. and distract my brain and rewire my brain. I'm just going to kind of find some white space. And so, meditation does that for me. But other people, they do other things to be able to relax. They get body work or they do yoga, on a scale of 0 to 10. So it's not, people always want to know the one thing that's going to help them level up with their learning in life. But here are 10 things, because you could do all of these things and not get a good night's sleep and still not function the way that you're not going to have your best self, right? You could do all these things and eat processed meals. You could do all the other things right, but eat processed meals. And when you're in a food coma, how's your ability to study? What's your
Right.
motivation to present and perform, and do really well? So I would say this is like a self-assessment. And then when you see what the area that you're struggling with, or you're not putting a spotlight there, then you could put some more energy and attention towards it, and everything changes.
You talked earlier about melatonin. I interviewed Dr. Michael Bruce on my
Mhm.
last podcast, and he mentioned that you worked with him as well. And as you would know, Dr. Michael Bruce, he is the sleep doctor for our listeners who don't know who that is. He's not a big fan of melatonin supplements. So, we had like a really interesting talk about melatonin and supplements and natural forms of melatonin and the impact of blue light and various other things which you've mentioned as well. So he mentioned that you worked with him. Was it what was that about?
Yeah. So, okay, this is kind of intimate, but
Sorry,
I have
I just
no, no, no,
just
no.
me
No,
a
let's go.
little
Let's go
bit.
here. No, I love being raw and just real, and hopefully it'll be rewarding for people. For me, my adult life, I struggled with sleep issues. From the year 2010 to the time I met Dr. Michael Bruce and I introduced him to Vision and Mind Valley. He was my sleep coach. I think it's all, as I'm a brain coach, I think the people that if they could afford it, they could find mentors to help them along the way. I notice a lot of the performers that I train, I teach actors to memorize scripts or speed read scripts, memorize lines. But a lot of them have a voice coach. A lot of them have a financial coach, right? A lot of people have a marketing coach. Some people have a personal trainer at the gym. I want to be a personal trainer for their brain, right? So I kind of popularized this title as brain coach, and I see other people starting to adopt that, and I'm glad that it's getting out there.
Totally.
So I have a sleep coach, and Dr. Michael Bruce. I would from 2010, 2015 approximately. I was sleeping about 90 minutes a night total.
Wow.
And it was life threatening. I was hospitalized a number of times because I would go nights without sleep. And it wasn't because my brain was racing. I have a very controlled mind with my practice, the work I've done. But I had this kind of very extreme form of sleep apnea, obstructive sleep apnea. And we connected through Larry King, took me to UCLA with the help and the guidance of Dr. Michael Bruce. And I had a surgery called UPPP, very painful surgery where they surgically removed my tonsils, uvula, soft palate, and it created an airway where I could breathe better. And I have a deviated septum, and it was all. And I realized that, afterwards I started sleeping 4 hours a night, and that's a huge jump from 90 minutes a night. It's not enough to be optimal, but it's a big magnitude and a huge lift. And I tested my parents and my siblings afterwards, and they all have sleep apnea. So that's what I mean about some things are just genetic, right? The genetic roll of the dice, just like a lot of things are. But then, from there, I started optimizing it more and more, and I realized I started putting my attention, and it didn't help that I had my brain injuries. It didn't help that I would pull all these all-nighters as a child to keep up with all the other kids because I would work 2 or 3 times harder, but I would still not do as well. So I'd stay up all night, and that wasn't good for my sleep rituals. As I built my career, because I've been doing this, over 30 years, I would travel. And so jet lag, sleeping in foreign environments, I could be in Dubai, Australia, and then LA in one week speaking. And, that really affected my sleep habits also as well. So with the help of Dr. Michael Bruce and other mentors, sleep experts, I was able to kind of bounce not only back, but bounce forward. And so yeah, there's a real science and art to all these different things, and that's why I could write a whole book on sleep. That's why we've done so many podcast episodes on our show on sleep.
Also, do you honestly feel that ice baths maybe helped you a little bit because the science behind ice baths and the way it puts your body in that rest and digest state, and also it really enhances your sleep. Has that helped you in any way?
Yeah, I met Wim Hof, who's
Nice.
the Iceman, in 2013. We were speaking at an event in Boston together, and from there, I've been doing cold therapy every single day, for the past 10 years because of it. And so what happens in an ice bath, with your physiology is it lowers inflammation, and we know inflammation is contributes to a lot of uh, health issues, mental health issues. Um, I don't know how much people know about Wim Hof's story. He's the guy that climbs the Himalayas in his underwear and you know swims in the
It's
Arctic
so
Circle
epic.
and those, yeah, and but he did it though because he lost his wife, and he was going into some serious mental health issues, and the only thing that helped him was jumping into like the cold water near his home, and it changed his state, right? And so it's great for neuroepinephrine, it's great for alertness. I mentioned dopamine. And so I graduated from doing a cold shower, and it's also important to do, to do hard things. Sometimes if we just do the easy things in life, we procrastinate, we binge watch everything, or, and no judgment if that's, if you're doing that to relax. But if we just do easy things in our life, we don't have those difficult conversations, we can't get ourselves to do the hard things, then life becomes very hard. If you do the easy things, life gets hard. But it's interesting because the polar opposite is true too. If you do hard things like work out and the use stress in our life, the positive stress like a cold shower, it actually makes it easier to do hard things in life, right? Because you, in a controlled environment like an ice bath, if you could find calm through your breathing or meditation while you're in there, then you could find the calm of life when there's chaos, when you have to go on stage or you have to perform or show up for your kids. And so cold therapy is something that I works for me. Now you want to use common sense. You want to be, use caution. If you have blood pressure issues, you want to be cautious. If you're definitely don't do it if you're pregnant, so you want to, they're warnings certainly. So you want to have a coach to help guide. You don't want to just jump into like cold ocean, because you could, it could be very dangerous also, but you want to do it in a safe way. And so I pushed myself through there. I did an ice bath this morning, to prep for this, but I find that it's one of the most important, my non-negotiables when it comes to my morning routine.
I
I
think you
don't I don't do cold baths at night though, or cold shower, because I find that wakes me up, right?
I'm
I
the
want to do
opposite
more
of that.
heat.
When I do a cold bath at night, I actually sleep better. But I
That's
think
amazing.
everyone's different, so there are
Yes.
people like just do it better in daytime and they're fine, and others do it at night and it's fine. And I know people who take caffeine at night and sleep like a baby. So
Yeah,
we're just
absolutely.
so
Yeah,
different.
he has Dr. Michael Bruce has like a protocol like where he does like a caffeinated nap. He'll have some
Yeah, it's
caffeine and
napa
take a nap.
latte. We talked about that. It's
Yeah.
the napa
And then he'll
latte.
bounce back. And everybody, that's the thing. Everyone's bio individual. I never
Right.
want people to do exactly what I do, but I want them to understand why I do it and then find, test it on themselves and, again, have a good health practitioner to help guide you through these things. But these are things that generally work for me, but it's more the principle, not the action, but the principle behind, what we do. Because I really do believe, I mean, you're a shining example. I can't believe that you have an adult child. I mean, just because you absolutely look amazing. But
Thank you.
the life we live are the lessons we teach.
Right.
Like we have a young child ourselves, and I turned 50 recently, and I just want to
Yeah.
be, I put my energy towards the things that matter. Because even with children, people say that they would die for their child, but will you live for your child? Will you be healthy for your child also as well?
I think just what you shared about your little encounter with Dr. Michael Bruce, I think is so important for other people who have feeling like they have no hope to be able to sleep better, people that are suffering with sleep
Yeah.
apnea, insomnia. Your story alone and you sharing that, and thank you so much for sharing that intimate
Yeah, yeah.
experience with us. It really gives them hope that they can also sleep better, feel better, if they're surrounded by the right people, given the right opportunities, and given the right mentor. Now, the field of brain training has grown massively, right? But it's not without its controversies. Now, I think this is an important topic to talk about because, like anything that we're constantly consuming online, there's always going to be people who talk about the right things and people who talk about the wrong things. Now, from
Yeah.
your experience, what are the most common misconceptions or misguided practices in the brain training industry that maybe you'd like to address?
Yeah, absolutely. If you look at brain training, you're right. It's kind of like the Wild West, just like a lot of industries, for dieting or financial investing, crypto, like, people have their own approach towards things. Ours tends to be very two things, science-based and practical, so that's where I focus on. A lot of the brain training apps have been debunked, meaning you take an app, and I'm not going to mention brands, but matching shapes and colors didn't seem to map over into people's real life. That's why I love with our programs. I mentioned we have an online academy teaching speed reading, memory for people of all ages, students and seniors and high performers. So we have a lot of data. And so we don't teach them things like in traditional brain training. We teach them things that are practical, and you can measure it. You can measure someone's ability to remember names before and after they learn techniques. It's very measurable. You can show people names and faces and test them before and after. You can measure their focus. You can measure their reading speed. You can measure their reading comprehension. I teach people how to learn, memorize facts or business vocabulary or remember numbers, because that's important for them as a financial advisor or something else. And so, the training that we do tends to be more science-based and also practical because you need to do those things in real life. I believe two of the most costly words in life sometimes, and certainly business, are I forgot. I forgot to do it. I forgot to bring it. I forgot that conversation we had. I forgot what I was going to do. I forgot that meeting. I forgot that person's name. Every single time we have those thoughts, we could lose trust and credibility and time. But on the other side, a good mind or good memory can be a multiplier for you when you could easily remember client information, product information, speeches without notes, facts and figures, and remember what you read, right? Another, for brain training space is speed reading. Like a lot of traditional speed reading, it's not really speed reading, it's skimming or it's scanning or it's skipping a bunch of words. And people go through those programs. Yes, they get the gist of something, but it's not about comprehension. So, like the training we do is not just about speed reading, it's about smart reading, right? And that's a totally different, right? Because we train a lot of financial advisors, a lot of attorneys, a lot of medical doctors. You don't want your doctor to get the gist of what she's reading, right? And so, so we teach something that's more based around comprehension, focus, remembering what you read, understanding what you read. So those are two of the big misnomers in brain training, that the apps are teaching things that don't map out to other areas of your life, shapes and matching colors or whatever. And speed reading is more associated with skimming and scanning. And that's good for some people that just want to skim or scan, but not for people who really want to understand and study something that's very important to their career or their schooling.
There's this marshmallow test. I'm sure
Mhm.
you've heard about it, and it was
Yeah.
conducted in the 1960s by a psychologist named Walter Mischel. Now, for those that don't know what that is, this test, I will just quickly talk about it. It involved offering children a choice between receiving a small reward immediately, so using a marshmallow, or waiting for
Mhm.
a larger reward, two marshmallows, after a short period. The study aimed to understand children's ability to delay gratification and the strategies that were used to resist temptation. The results suggested that those who were able to wait for longer rewarded themselves, displayed better self-control and impulse management.
Yeah.
Furthermore, followed up studies indicated that children who exhibited more self-control during the test tended to have better outcomes later in life, even higher educational attainment and healthier behaviors. Now, this test highlighted the importance of self-regulation and its impact on future success. Now, within your academy and what you do, is there maybe a similar test that you apply with individuals today?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, the marshmallow test is a series of psychological studies done in the 60s that explored how well the promise of future rewards could motivate preschoolers to control themselves. And as you mentioned, in a nutshell, they told these preschoolers that they could enjoy treats immediately, these marshmallows that they give them, but if they waited just 15 minutes that before they indulge in it, then they'd be rewarded with 2 bonus marshmallows. And it ended up to 70% of children couldn't help but gobble up the marshmallows immediately. But as you mentioned, for people who were able to delay gratification, they followed up 3 decades later, and they were generally more successful. They earned greater SAT, standardized test scores, and they maintained a healthier body mass index. And the test became a classic tale of real world value of self control. What I learned in it, we use in our trainings. Like one of the lessons when they followed up that the kids did at that age, that they were able to delay gratification, is they visualized themselves reaping the future reward. What does that mean? And one of the key reasons so many of the kids in the study ate the marshmallows quickly is because they didn't feel connected to their future self. That the ones who, so the ones they, twice as many marshmallows, right? So visualization is something we use in all our training where we get people to visualize the success of reading 3 times faster, to be able to walk into a room and meet 20 strangers and leave saying goodbye to every single one of them by name, right? So we future pace that. And when you could imagine it and see it, your brain doesn't know the difference between something you vividly imagine and something that's real. It's similar to like if you have a nightmare, your body responds, your heart rate goes up, you start sweating because your mind can't tell the difference. But when you could train your imagination to see the future self enjoying those rewards, you're more likely to stave off that urge and that impulse to get that immediate reward. The second lesson that we applied from the marshmallow test, because we pull all kinds of science from psychology to neurophysics, with all our training, so we make it easy for people, is training people to get happy with what they already have and the gains that they make. So if somebody just improves their reading speed, we have something on if people follow us on Instagram, I'll put the link in my profile where they could take a free speed reading class with me just as a thank you for everyone who's watching this and listening to this. So we use it. So the successful subjects, they employed an interesting tactic that helped them stave off their cravings. And they were able to physically and mentally distract themselves by focusing on the positive things and the current gains they were making in the present moment. So just before beginning the experiment, the researchers encouraged one group of children to brainstorm fun thoughts, memories of happiness, what they had in front of them, their family life. And some examples were as simple as being pushed on a swing by their parents, or the effect but the self-control was astonishing. And with having these happy, grateful thoughts, these children were able to wait on average about 10 minutes longer than the other kids that were exposed to the temptation of the marshmallows. So the study points out that they took to singing, to playing with themselves, right? Anything to not have to think about that sweet treat. They were just grateful. And I think that if people want to be wealthier, which I imagine a lot of people listening want to be, I think the key to wealth is gratitude. To see how far you've come, right? To not compare yourself to other people on social media, because the grass is always greener ultimately where you water it. And on Instagram and other social media platforms, it's greener because there's a lot of filters on social media, right? It's greener because of artificial turf, right? We're comparing ourselves to the highlight reel of everyone else's life, and we think that's their life all the time. And it's absolutely not true. Like all of us, I mean, all of us, including myself, I was mentioning my sleep issues, my focus issues, my memory issues, all of us are fighting a battle that nobody else sees. And that's why kindness is so important nowadays, when it comes to mental health. But use what you have at the moment to be appreciative. And you don't have to wait for a greater life to feel grateful. If you feel grateful, you'll have a greater life. Like if you want to feel wealthy, truly wealthy at this moment, count all the things you have in your life that money can't buy. If you could see this video or you could hear my voice, like you wouldn't trade that ability for all the money out there, right? And so like, I think that thought experiment that you could do using imagination is like, what if the only things you had in your life tomorrow or the things you express gratitude for today? And then all of a sudden you're like, you start to be happy because you just start building on that foundation of, you train your nervous system about rewiring your brain that you have enough. And then you don't have to stay there. You could grow, but see how far you've come. Because I don't think looking at our past is very useful unless you're comparing yourself to who you were yesterday.
Right.
You know, yeah.
Brain
I, I
exercise.
love I
Right.
love the marshmallow test. I
Yeah, I
know
know, me too.
a lot
That's why I
about it.
want to talk about it with you because I thought it was such a cool task that they conducted. Now I want to just move on quickly to brain exercises. Now, this is so often recommended. I recommend it myself to
Mhm.
people that suffer with stress, and it's a great stress reliever. Now, for someone who is the number one brain coach and has worked with incredible high achievers, like what are certain breathing techniques that really influence the brain, and which ones would you suggest to our listeners to incorporate into their routines?
Yeah, breathing is so important. I go there very early with people because, when people have brain fog or they have low energy, let's say mental fatigue, they often want to go to food, to caffeine or to something, right? To supplement. And, we could go a long time, just look at it with common sense. We could go a long time without food. We could go weeks without food, right? We know people fast that long. Um, but you could go like weeks without food. You could go days without water, right? A few days without water, but we can only go like minutes without breathing. So that's where we should prioritize our breath. And certainly I use certain breathing techniques, like for me, my day is I want to get the elements in my life. The first thing in the morning, there's this, I did a podcast on this that throughout history, ancient cultures, ancient Greeks, the Babylonians, they used to think that everything was created out of four elements, right? Fire, water, earth, and air, breath, right? And so I try to get first thing in the morning, those four elements in my life. And the best thing about it is they don't cost anything, right? And so it's very easy to biohack yourself because ultimately all the biohacks that people, and I keynote many of the biohacking conferences. If they use red light therapy, that's to mimic nature, right? Sunlight. If they use PEMF, MAT, it's to mimic the frequencies of the earth, right? If they do certain things, it's if they have breathing devices like hypoxic machines or hyperbaric chambers is to mimic the oxygen, right? And so like my goal was I want to get connected to the elements. So the first thing I'll do is I'll go outside. I mentioned getting sunlight, so that's the fire first thing in the morning for good for my sleep, my circadian rhythm. I'll drink my water. I mentioned, right, and structured water. I'll also go get grounded. I'll sit like outside, go for a walk, sit on the grass or something, and it discharges a lot of those electrons, and I get fueled by it. And also the air is through my breathing. So I'll do a series of whether it's Wim Hof breathing or alpha breathing or box breathing. I'll take box breathing into my cold baths because how I I self-regulate when I'm in something that's cold. I'll do a breathing, something simple like 4-4-4 count, like a box. Like I'll breathe in for count of four. I'll hold my breath for a count of four. I'll exhale for a count of four. I'll hold my breath for four and then inhale for four. But it helps me get from the sympathetic fight or flight when you're in that water to parasympathetic kind of relax, this calm kind of state. So I use breathing and I use those four elements at nighttime too. A combination of light, of water at night, and also like the bath and also breathing. Yeah, I'll do some yoga nidra, before I go to bed to help calm my mind. I have like a little mantra that I use that I've just developed for my own self. And it just really works. So breath is a wonderful way. Sometimes even when you're reading something, right? You're reading a book, and a lot of times people, when they read, they get tired. And part of it is if you study them, you look at their physiology, their posture, and it's collapsed when they're reading. They have bad posture when they're reading. And the lower 1/3 of your lungs actually absorbs 2/3 of the oxygen. And so we're not getting enough oxygen. So sometimes what we need to do is do some breathing to kind of wake up our brain, also as well to clean those mental cobwebs, if you will.
I'm sure our listeners are super, super eager to now take action after all of these incredible insights that you have shared. So that was just phenomenal. I'm so happy that we talked about all of those incredible topics just from a point of view that I know that my community will benefit so much from the things that you have just said. To conclude this podcast, I'd like to just ask you, what are some of really few actionable steps or resources that you'd recommend that
Yeah.
people can explore a little bit further and deepen their understanding of brain optimization and personal growth?
So, this is my 32nd year of teaching full time. This is my life's work. My mission is to build better, brighter brains. No brain left behind. And I've along this way, I've read, for 4.5 years, I read a book a day, and I spent a lot of my personal education learning everything about brain health, adult learning theory, taking every course, using every biohack. I've probably spent over $1 million, over my lifetime just in this area. So the good news is people don't have to do that. They don't have to spend 3 decades and, a good fortune to do that, because we've done the work for people. And what I would say is anything that we talked about here is very actionable, right? Even the 10 things to upgrade your brain, little things. You don't have to do everything, but adding some of these brain foods into your diet. Like, there's only 4 choices we can make at any given time. You could either do more of something, less of something, or stop doing something, or start doing something new. Those are the only 4 choices. The fifth choice is just to do what you always done, which we know is the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing, expecting different results. So you either do more of something. So do more movement, maybe, or do more of your sleep hygiene, right? Or do less of something, eat a little bit less of those treats and those sugar, things, or binge watch a little bit less on, on your television shows, or add something new. Maybe you haven't thought about adding an omega-3 supplement, or adding a cold shower into your life. Or, you could just stop doing something altogether, stop smoking, right? Or
Right.
stop checking your phone first thing in the morning. So ultimately, I could give people suggestions, but obviously you and we can't do the work for them. But what I want to leave people with is just knowing that knowledge alone is not power. Now, knowledge is potential power. It becomes power when you utilize it and apply it. So my recommendation would be to take one thing and one thing only and just apply it and start developing some momentum. I break things down into very small, simple steps, right? Because little by little, a little becomes a lot, right? Inch by inch, it's a cinch. Yard by yard, it's way too hard. So what's one little thing? And in terms of resources, 95% of the things that we publish is free. Again, people could go to jimkwik.com/more, and they'll see like 10 different things you could get from us that's absolutely free. Our podcast is free. Our YouTube is free. We have over 1.2 million subscribers there. And so you could get your weekly dose on brain training there. And then, that free masterclass we offer everybody for their speed reading. Most people will double their reading speed in just 1 hour. Bring a
I'm
book,
gonna
go
take that.
online.
I'm gonna take that
Yeah.
challenge.
Yeah. And then, one of the new things that we have in the new book, people go to limitlessbook.com and get these bonuses. But we have a quiz. We created a quiz that I encourage everybody to take. It only takes 4 minutes, and they could take it at mybrainanimal.com. Now, at mybrainanimal.com, I pulled from the psychologies and the tools and the methodologies from introvert, extrovert, from left brain, right brain, from different learning styles, and created a simple assessment that's fun, that shows you your brain animal type. And what that is it's a code, CODE. And the C is, are you a cheetah? The cheetahs are the fast actors. They're the intuitives, right? They're the ones that take sprints and they take everything and put it into action. But maybe instead of a cheetah, you're an owl. And an owl is very logical. They love facts and figures and formulas. They love data, right? Or maybe you are a D in code, which is a dolphin, and you're a creative visionary. You're a great pattern recognizer. You love using your imagination to solve problems. Or maybe you're an E, which is an elephant, which are your social creatures. You're great with people. You love working and collaborating in teams. You have high levels of empathy, right? But once you take this quiz at mybrainanimal.com, I'll give you a multiple page report that's personalized learning for every single person, and it's free right now. And so I'll give you, like, based on your animal type, how do you read? because depending on your animal, you want to read differently. Depending on your animal, you're going to memorize differently. Depending on your animal, you're going to invest differently, right? You're going to make decisions differently. You're going to raise children differently. So I encourage everybody to take that quiz and then have your significant other, have your team, have your children take the quiz. And it would reveal a whole lot about, how we prefer to learn. Because ultimately, what I've learned is it's not how smart you are, it's how are you smart. It's not how smart your kids are. It's not how smart your spouse is. It's not how smart your team is. It's how are they smart? And we all have these innate superpowers, these talents, these traits, and it's really is it expressed best in your life? And this quiz will help them to be able to do that.
Jim, you are such an incredible, inspiring human. And I
Thank you.
just loved this episode with you. So thank you so much.
Yeah, Mary, I want to thank you for the work you do. I mentioned that the life we live are the lessons that we teach others, and we want to be a shining example for the people around us and our family, our friends, our community, our followers, online. I would challenge everyone to actually take a small, simple step right now, is to take a screenshot of this right now, whatever you're consuming this, and tag Mary, tag myself. I'm
Oh,
just at Jim
that's
Kwik,
amazing.
Kwik, and post one thing you're going to do for your better brain, for your limitless brain after this conversation, one thing you learned, or one thing that you're committing to, and post it online so your fans, your followers, your family, your friends, learn from you, because that's why you learn anything. You learn it either because what it's going to do for your life, and you learn it for sharing it with other people. You learn to earn to return. And so I challenge everyone to do that. Because you tag both of us, I'll get to see it, and I'll actually gift a copy of Limitless to a couple people just as a thank you for listening to this episode.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you. You're amazing.
Thanks, Mary.